Chapter 13 The Council Takes Over. Benson left some 10 minutes later. Nothing that David told him satisfied him with regards to his theories connecting Martians and poisoning, and his uneasiness grew rapidly. He said, "I don't want hens catching me. We've had words. What about Mackian? He's on our side, isn't he? I don't know. He stands to be ruined by day after tomorrow. I don't think he has enough spine left to stand up to the fellow. Look, I'd better go. If you think of anything at all, you get it to me somehow, will you?" He held out a hand. David took it briefly, and then Benson was gone. David sat up in bed. His own uneasiness had grown since he had been wakened. His clothes were thrown over a chair at the other end of the room. His boots stood upright by the side of the bed. He had not dared inspect them in Benson's presence. He had scarcely dared look at them. Perhaps, he thought pessimistically, they had not tampered with them. A farm boy's hip boots are inviolate. Stealing from a farm boy's hip boots, next to stealing his sandcar in the open desert, was the unforgivable crime. Even in death, a farm boy's boots were buried with him with the contents unremoved. David groped inside the inner pocket of each boot in turn, and his fingers met nothingness. There had been a handkerchief in one, a few odd coins in the other. Undoubtedly they had gone through his clothing. He had expected that. But apparently they had not drawn the line at his boots. He held his breath as his fingers dived into the recesses of one boot. The soft leather reached to his armpit and crumpled down as his fingers stretched out to the toes. A surge of pure gladness filled him as he felt the soft gauze-like material of the Martian mask. He had hidden it there on the general principles before the bath, but he had not anticipated the soporite. It was luck, purely, that they had not searched the toes of his boots. He would have to be more careful henceforward. He put the mask into a boot pocket and clipped it shut. He picked up the boots, which had been polished while he slept, which was good of someone, and showed the almost instinctive respect which the farm boy had for boots, anybody's boots. His clothes had been put through the refresher spray as well. The shining plastic fibers of which they were composed had a brand new smell about them. The pockets were all empty, of course, but underneath the chair all the contents were in a careless heap. He sorted them out. Nothing seemed to be missing. Even the handkerchief and coins from his boot pockets were there. He put on underclothes and socks, the one-piece overall, and then the boots. He was buckling his belt when a brown, bearded farm boy stepped in. David looked up. He said coldly, "What do you want, Zukas?" The farm boy said, "Where do you think you're going, Earthy?" His little eyes were glaring viciously, and to David the other's expression was much the same as it had been the first day he had laid eyes on him. David could recall Hen's sandcar outside the Farm Employment Office, himself just settling into the seat, and the bearded, angry face glowering at him while a weapon fired before he could move to defend himself. "Nowhere," said David, "that I need to ask your permission." "That's so. You're wrong, mister, 'cause you're stayin' right here. Hens orders." Zukas blocked the door with his body. 2 blasters were conspicuously displayed at either side of his drooping belt. Zukas waited. Then, his greasy beard splitting in two as he smiled yellowly, he said, "Think you maybe changed your mind, Earthy?" "Maybe," said David. He added, "Someone got in to see me just now. How come? Weren't you watching?" "Shut up!" snarled Zukas. "Or were you paid off to look the other way for a while? Hens might not like that." Zukas spat, missing David's boots by half an inch. David said, "You want to toss out your blasters and try that again?" Zukas said, "Just watch if you got any feeding, Earthy." He closed and locked the door behind him as he left. A few minutes passed and there was the sound of a clattering metal against it as it opened again. Zukas carried a tray. There was the yellow of squash on it and the green of something leafy. "Vegetable salad," said Zukas. "Good enough for you." A blackened thumb showed over one end of the tray. The other end balanced upon the back of his wrist so that the farm boy's hand was not visible. David straightened, leaping to one side, bending his legs under him and bringing them down upon the mattress of the bed. Zukas, caught by surprise, turned in alarm, but David, using the springs of the mattress and extra leverage, launched into the air. He collided heavily with the farm boy, brought down, one hand flatly on the tray, ripping out of the other's grasp and hurling it to the ground while twisting his other hand in the farm boy's beard. Zukas dropped, yelling hoarsely. David's booted foot came down on the farm boy's hand, the one that had been hidden under the tray. The other's yell became an agonized scream as the smashed fingers flew open, releasing the cocked blaster they'd been holding. David's hand whipped away from the beard and caught the other's unharmed wrist as it groped for the second blaster. He brought it up, roughly across the prone chest, under the head and out again. He pulled. "Quiet," he said, "or I'll tear your arm loose from its socket." Zukas subsided, his eyes rolling, his breath puffing out wetly. He said, "What are you after?" "Why were you hiding the blaster under the tray?" "Had to protect myself, didn't I? In case you jumped me while my hands were full of tray." "Then why didn't you send someone else with the tray and cover him?" "I didn't think of that," whined Zukas. David tightened the pressure a bit, and Zukas's mouth twisted in agony. "Suppose you tell the truth, Zukas." I was going to kill you." "And what would you have told Mackin?" "You were trying to escape." "Was that your own idea?" "No, it was Hans. Get Hans. I'm just following orders." David released him. He picked up one blaster and flicked the other out of its holster. "Get up." Zukas rolled over on one side. He groaned as he tried to lift his weight on a mashed right hand and nearly torn his left shoulder. "What are you going to do? You wouldn't shoot an unarmed man, would you?" "Wouldn't you?" asked David. A new voice broke in. "Drop the guns, Williams," it said crisply. David moved his head quickly. Hens was in the doorway, blaster leveled. Behind him was Mackin, face gray and etched with lines. Hen's eyes showed his intentions plainly enough, and his blaster was ready. David dropped the blasters he had just torn from Zukas. "Kick them over," said Hens. David did so. "Now, what happened?" David said, "You know what happened. Zukas tried a little assassination at your orders, and I didn't sit still and take it." Zukas was gabbling. "No, sir, Mr. Hens, no, sir. I was no such thing. I was bringing in his lunch tray when he jumped me. My hands were full of tray. I had no chance to defend myself." "Shut up," said Hens contemptuously. "We'll have a talk about that later. Get out of here, and be back with a couple of pinions in less than no time." Zukas scrambled out. Mackin said mildly, "Why the pinions, Hens?" "Because this man is a dangerous impostor, Mr. Mackin. You remember I brought him in because he seemed to know something about the food poisoning?" Yes, of course." "He told us a story about a younger sister being poisoned by Martian jam, remember? I checked on that. There haven't been too many deaths by poisoning that have reached the authorities the way this man claimed his sister's death had. Less than 250, in fact. It was easy to check them all, and I had that done. None on record involved a 12-year-old girl with a brother of William's age who died of a jar of jam." Mackin was startled. "How long have you known this, Hans?" "Almost since he came here, but I let it go. I watched to see what he was after. I sent Griswold to watch him." "To try to kill me, you mean?" interrupted David. "Yes, you would say that, considering you killed him because he was fool enough to let you suspect him." He turned to Mackin. "Then he managed to wiggle himself in with that soft-hearted sap Benson, where he could keep close check on our progress in investigating the poisoning. Then, as the last straw, he stripped out of the dome 3 nights ago for a reason he won't explain. You want to know why? He was reporting to the men who had hired him, the ones who are behind all this. It's more than just a coincidence that the ultimatum came while he was gone." "And where were you?" demanded David suddenly. "Did you stop keeping tabs on me after Griswold died? If you knew I was gone on the kind of deal you suspected, why wasn't a party sent out after me?" Mackin looked puzzled and began, "Well—" But David interrupted. "Let me finish, Mr. Mackin. I think that maybe Hens wasn't in the dome the night I left, and even the day and night after I left. Where were you, Hens?" Hens stepped forward, his mouth twisting. David's cupped hand was near his face. He did not believe Hens would shoot, but he was ready to use the shield mask if he had to. Mackin placed a nervous hand on Hens' shoulder. "I suggest we leave him for the council," David said quickly. "What is this about the council?" None of your business, snarled Hens. Zookas was back with the pinions. They were flexible plastic rods that could be bent in any way and then frozen in position. They were infinitely stronger than ropes or even metal handcuffs. "Hold out your hands," ordered Hens. David did so without a word. The pinion was wrapped twice about his wrists. Zookas, leering, drew them savagely tight, then drew out the pin, which action resulted in an automatic molecular rearrangement that hardened the plastic. The energy developed in that rearrangement made the plastic warm to the touch. Another pinion went about David's ankles. David sat quietly down on the bed. In one hand he still had the shield mask. Mackion's remark about the council was proof enough to David that he would not remain pinioned long. Meanwhile he was content to allow matters to develop further. He said again, "What's this about the council?" But he need not have asked. There was a yell from outside, and a catapulting figure hurled itself through the door with a cry of, "Where's Williams?" It was Bigman himself, as large as life, which wasn't very large. He was paying no attention to anything but David's seated figure. He was speaking rapidly and breathlessly. "I didn't hear you were through a dust storm until I landed inside the dome. Sizzling Ceres, you must have been fried. How did you get through it? I He noticed David's position for the first time and turned furiously. "Who in space has a boy tied up like this?" Hens had caught his breath by now. One of his hands shot out and caught Bigman's overall collar in a brutal grip that lifted his slight body off the floor. "I told you it would happen, slug, if I caught you here again." Bigman yelled, "Let go, you mouth jerk. I've got a right in here. I'll give you a second and a half to let me go or you'll answer to the Council of Science." Mackin said, "For mouse sakes, Hens, let him go." Hens let him drop. "Get out of here." "Not on your life. I'm an accredited employee of the Council. I came here with Dr. Silvers. Ask him." He nodded at the tall, thin man just outside the door. His name suited him. His hair was silver white, and he had a moustache of the same shade. "If you'll pardon me," said Dr. Silvers, "I would like to take charge of matters. The government at International City on Earth has declared a state of emergency, and all farms will be under the control of the Council of Science henceforward. I have been assigned to take over the Mackian farms." I expected something like this," muttered Mackian unhappily. "Remove this man's pinions," ordered Dr. Silvers. Hen said, "He's dangerous." "I will take full responsibility." Bigman jumped and clicked his heels. "On your way, Hens." Hens paled in anger, but no words came. 3 hours had passed when Dr. Silvers met Mackian and Hens again in Mackian's private quarters. He said, "I want to go over all the production records of this farm for the last 6 months. I will have to see Dr. Benson with regard to whatever advances he has made in connection with solving the food poisoning problem. We have 6 weeks to break this matter, no more." "6 weeks!" exploded Hens. "You mean 1 day?" "No, sir. If we haven't the answers by the time the ultimatum expires, all exports of food from Mars will be stopped. We will not give in while a single chance remains." "By space," said Hens, "Earth will starve!" "Not for 6 weeks," said Dr. Silvers. "Food supplies will last to that long with rationing." "There'll be panic and rioting," said Hens. "True," said Dr. Silvers grimly. "It'll be most unpleasant." "You'll ruin the farm syndicates," groaned Mackian. "It'll be ruined anyway. Now, I intend to see Dr. Benson this evening. We will have a 4-way conference tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow midnight, if nothing breaks anywhere on Mars or at the Moon's central laboratories, the embargo goes into effect and arrangements will be made for an all-Mars conference of the various syndicate members." "Why?" asked Hens. "Because," said Dr. Silvers, "there is reason to think that whoever is behind this mad crime must be connected to the farms closely. They know too much about the farms for any other conclusion to be arrived at." "Then what about Williams?" "I've questioned him. He sticks to his story, which is, I'll admit, queer enough. I've sent him to the city where he'll be questioned further, under hypnosis if necessary." Dr. Silvers said, "Open the door, Mr. Mackian." Mackian did so, as though he were not the owner of one of the largest farms on Mars, and, by virtue of that fact, one of the richest and most powerful men in the solar system. Bigman stepped in. He looked at Hens challengingly. He said, "Williams is on a sand car headed back for the city under guard." "Good," said Dr. Silvers, his thin lips set tightly. A mile outside the farm dome, the sand car stopped. David Starr, nose-piece in place, stepped out. He waved to the driver who leaned out and said, "Remember, lock 7. We'll have one of our men there to let you in." David smiled and nodded. He watched the sand car continue its trip toward the city, and then turned back on foot to the farm dome. The men of the council cooperated, of course. They had helped him in his desire to leave openly and to return secretly. But none of them, not even Dr. Silvers, knew the purpose of his request. He had the pieces to the puzzle, but he still needed the proof. And thus ends this chapter. Only 3 more left in this book. Hope you've enjoyed and have a good day. Bye!